The rain was ruthless, soaking the streets and drowning out the city's conscience. While luxury cars sped past, a homeless mother stood trembling, shielding her baby with her own body. No one stopped until one man did. A billionaire, hidden behind tinted glass, saw something that pierced his soul. What he did next would shock her and change her life forever. The rain fell like it had a personal grudge against the city, slamming into the pavement with cold fury. It soaked through clothes, crawled into bones, and turned the streets into mirrors of misery. Under the flickering glow of a broken streetlight, a woman stood barefoot, her toes numb, her knees weak, her arms wrapped tightly around a small bundle pressed against her chest. The bundle moved. She adjusted her torn shawl again, trying to block the wind. The shawl was thin, barely more than fabric memories stitched together, but it was all she had. Inside it, her baby whimpered softly, a fragile sound that barely survived the roar of the rain. "It's okay," she whispered, though her own lips were blue. "Mama's here." Her name was Aisha. Once she had a home. Once she had dreams that felt ordinary, warm meals, a safe bed, a future where her child would never know hunger. That life had washed away slowly, then all at once. A husband lost to an accident, medical bills she couldn't pay, landlords who stopped listening, doors that closed without apology. The rain that night felt like the final insult. She held out her hand to the passing crowd. Cars splashed dirty water onto her legs as they rushed by. People walked past with umbrellas tilted carefully, eyes forward, shoulders tight, pretending they hadn't seen her. Some glanced for a second, then looked away faster, as if her existence accused them of something. A man in a suit stepped around her, phone pressed to his ear. "I'll call you back," he snapped into the device, annoyed. Not at the rain, but at the inconvenience of her being there. A young couple hurried past, laughing nervously, whispering something about how sad it was, but never slowing down. Aisha didn't blame them anymore. Blame required energy, and she had none left. Her baby began to cry louder now, hunger mixing with cold. Aisha rocked gently, swaying despite the ache in her legs. She kissed the baby's forehead, feeling the chill there too, and panic tightened her chest. "Please," she said aloud, her voice almost lost in the storm. "Just a little help." A few coins lay in a shallow puddle near her feet, barely enough to buy bread. The rain threatened to wash even those away. Across the street, traffic slowed as a black luxury car pulled up to the red light. Its paint gleamed even under the dark sky, untouched by the misery surrounding it. Inside, the leather seats were warm, the windows tinted, the world outside reduced to blurred streaks of gray. The man in the back seat stared out, distracted, his mind heavy with numbers, meetings, and decisions that moved markets and crushed competitors. His name was Daniel Whitmore, billionaire, CL. A man the world described as powerful, ruthless, untouchable. Then he saw her. At first, she was just another shape in the rain. But something made him look again. Maybe it was the way she curved her body forward, not to beg, but to shield. Maybe it was the instinctive tilt of her head, listening for the smallest sound from the bundle in her arms. "Stop the car," Daniel said quietly. The driver hesitated. "Sir, the light." "Stop," Daniel repeated, firmer now. The car rolled to a halt, ignoring the honks behind it. Daniel leaned forward, peering through the glass. The rain traced lines down the window like tears. He watched as Aisha adjusted the shawl again, her hand shaking. He saw her lips move in silent prayer. He saw the baby's tiny fist emerge briefly, pale and trembling, before she tucked it back in. Something twisted in his chest. He hadn't felt that sensation in years. Not fear. Not stress. Something else. Something old. How long has she been there? He asked, almost to himself. The driver followed his gaze. Hard to say, sir. Lots of people like that around here. People like that. Daniel's jaw tightened. He remembered another rain, decades ago, another street, another woman holding a child. He remembered being small, cold, hungry, and invisible. He remembered how the world had looked away then, too. The light turned green. Cars behind them surged forward, horns blaring. Drive, Daniel said suddenly. The driver obeyed, relieved. But Daniel didn't stop looking back. Aisha felt her arms weakening. The baby's cries softened into exhausted whimpers, which scared her more. She shifted her weight, nearly slipping. A stranger brushed past her shoulder, muttering something about beggars. She didn't hear the words clearly, only the contempt. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the rain hit her face. If she cried, the rain would hide it. A black car passed by slowly. She barely noticed it. Rich people came and went all the time. Their world was sealed shut. But the car didn't disappear into traffic. It pulled over. Aisha opened her eyes as the rear door opened. A man stepped out, his shoes immediately splashed by muddy water. He wore a dark coat, tailored, expensive, utterly out of place in the chaos of a street. She instinctively pulled the baby closer, fear flaring. Men like him didn't stop for women like her. Not without a reason. Daniel walked toward her, rain soaking his hair, his coat, his certainty. He stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the baby's face, red and scrunched with cold. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Aisha's heart pounded. She braced herself for humiliation, for judgment, for the sharp words she had learned to expect. Instead, the man looked at her, not through her, not past her, but at her. You shouldn't be out here in this weather, he said, his voice calm but strained, as if holding something back. She swallowed. I know, she replied softly. But my baby, he needs to eat. The rain continued to fall, relentless, uncaring. Daniel took a slow breath. This wasn't a donation moment. This wasn't about tossing money and walking away. He could feel it. Something irreversible hovered in the air, heavy as the storm clouds above them. Aisha waited, her arms aching, her baby shivering, unaware that the next few minutes would tear her life open and rebuild it in ways she could never imagine. And for the first time that night, the rain seemed to pause just enough. To listen, the rain pressed harder, as if testing both of them. Aisha shifted her stance, her legs trembling from standing too long on the cold pavement. She kept her eyes on the man's shoes at first, clean, polished, expensive, so different from her bare, cracked feet. People like him usually didn't stop. When they did, it was often to say something sharp, something that cut deeper than hunger. Daniel noticed her hesitation. He noticed the way she angled her body slightly away from him, instinctively protecting her baby. That small movement struck him more powerfully than any words could have. This wasn't a woman begging for herself. This was a mother fighting the world with nothing but her own body. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then answered, "Aisha." The baby whimpered again, and she rocked him softly. "I'm sorry if he's loud. He's cold." Daniel glanced at the tiny face, the faint shiver running through the child's body. His chest tightened. He reached into his coat, and Aisha flinched, her muscles tensing. He stopped immediately. "It's okay," he said quickly. "I won't hurt you." Slowly, deliberately, he pulled out his wallet and held it where she could see it. He opened it, not to flash wealth, but to show intention. He took out a few bills, then paused. A few bills felt insulting. Too small for the moment. Too easy. He looked back at her. "How long have you been out here?" "Since afternoon," she replied. The shelter was full today. They said maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow. A word people used when they didn't want to help today. Daniel nodded, absorbing that. He held out the money, but Aisha didn't take it right away. Pride flickered across her face, weak, exhausted, but still alive. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Really? This will help." She reached out with one hand, careful not to loosen her grip on the baby, and took the bills. Her fingers brushed his, cold as ice. The shock of it traveled straight through him. "You're freezing," he said. She gave a small, tired smile. "The rain does that." Daniel exhaled slowly. He could walk away now. He had technically done his part. That was what the world expected. Give a little. Feel better. Move on. But his feet didn't move. Instead, he did something unexpected. He took off his coat. Before Aisha could protest, he stepped closer and gently draped it around her shoulders, careful not to startle her or the baby. The coat was heavy, lined, warm. It swallowed her small frame. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You don't have to." "I know," he said softly. "But I want to." The warmth hit her instantly, and her breath caught. She hadn't felt real warmth in weeks. Her eyes burned, and she looked down quickly, afraid he might see tears forming. People began to notice now. A few slowed their steps, watching the strange scene. A wealthy man standing in the rain, coatless, in front of a homeless woman. Some whispered. Some stared. Some scoffed. Daniel felt their eyes, but ignored them. "What about your baby?" he asked. "Does he need a doctor?" Aisha's grip tightened. "He's been coughing," she admitted. "I try to keep him dry, but it's hard." Daniel nodded once, his decision settling into place like a locked door. He reached into his pocket again, this time pulling out his phone. "I'm going to get you out of the rain," he said. "Both of you." Her head snapped up. "I don't want trouble," she said quickly. "I'm not doing anything wrong." "I know," he replied. "This isn't trouble." He turned away slightly, making a call. His voice shifted, becoming sharper, more commanding. He spoke briefly, efficiently. Aisha didn't understand most of what he said, only that it sounded important. Powerful. She hugged her baby closer, her heart racing. Who was this man? And why was he doing this? Within minutes, a second car pulled up, a large, dark vehicle, more discreet than the first. The driver stepped out and opened the door without question. Daniel turned back to her. "Please," he said, holding the door open. "Just for now. Get warm." Aisha stared at the open door, at the soft interior light spilling onto the wet street. She shook her head slowly. "I can't," she whispered. "People say things. They think things." Daniel met her gaze, his expression steady. "I don't care what people think. And you shouldn't have to either." The baby coughed again, a weak, raspy sound that sliced through her resistance. She looked down at him, then back at the car. The rain soaked her hair, ran down her face, blurred the world. After a long moment, she nodded. Daniel helped her inside, careful, respectful, keeping his distance. As soon as the door closed, the rain became a muffled whisper. Warm air filled the space. Aisha gasped softly as feeling returned to her fingers. She began to cry then, not loudly, not dramatically. Just silent tears sliding down her cheeks as weeks of fear and exhaustion finally cracked. Daniel stood outside for a moment longer, letting the rain drench him. He needed it. The cold kept him grounded, kept this from feeling like a dream. When he finally climbed in beside her, the driver pulled away from the curb, leaving behind the streetlight, the puddles, and the place where the world had ignored her. Aisha wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't usually." "It's okay," Daniel interrupted gently. You don't have to be strong right now. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Why are you doing this? The question hung between them, heavy with suspicion and hope. Daniel looked forward, watching the rain streak across the windshield. Because once, he said slowly, someone walked past me in the rain too. And I promised myself I'd never be that person. Aisha didn't fully understand his words, but she felt their weight. She didn't know yet that this ride was only the beginning, that the kindness she had just witnessed was about to turn into something far bigger, something that would shock her to her core. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but for the first time that night, it no longer felt like punishment. The car moved smoothly through the city, gliding past neon lights and soaked sidewalks where people still rushed through the storm, unaware that a life was quietly changing inside the vehicle. Aisha sat stiffly at first, unsure where to put her hands, her body still braced for danger. The warmth felt unreal, almost illegal, like something she hadn't earned. Her baby, wrapped now in Daniel's coat, slowly stopped shivering. His breathing evened out, his tiny fingers curling into the fabric as if it belonged to him. Aisha watched his chest rise and fall, relief loosening the knot that had been strangling her heart all night. "Thank you," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. "For him." Daniel nodded. "What's his name?" "Yusuf," she replied, brushing a damp curl away from her baby's forehead. "He's all I have." Daniel glanced at the child, then back at the rain-streaked window. "That makes him everything." Silence settled between them, not awkward, but heavy. The kind of silence that invites memories to surface. Aisha broke it first. "Where are you taking us?" "Somewhere safe," Daniel answered. "Warm. There's a doctor on call." Her shoulders tensed again. "I can't pay for that." Daniel turned to her. "I didn't ask you to." She studied his face, searching for pity, for judgment. She found neither. What she saw instead was something almost fragile, like a man standing at the edge of an old wound. They arrived at a private medical clinic tucked between tall buildings. The lights inside were bright and steady, immune to the storm outside. As Daniel stepped out, staff rushed to meet him, umbrellas raised, voices respectful, urgent. Aisha noticed the way they addressed him. "Sir." "Mr. Whitmore." The way they didn't question his instructions. Her heart skipped. She pulled Yusuf closer. Inside, a doctor examined the baby gently, listening to his chest, checking his temperature. Aisha hovered nearby, every muscle tight, afraid to miss a single movement. "He's lucky," the doctor finally said. "Cold and underfed, but no pneumonia. He needs warmth, rest, and proper nutrition." Aisha sagged into the chair, her legs nearly giving out. She covered her mouth as a sob escaped. Daniel stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching her reaction. Relief washed over him too, but it carried something else. Anger. Not at her. At a world where a baby's survival depended on a stranger's mercy. Afterward, a nurse brought warm formula and clean blankets. Aisha fed Yusuf slowly, tears dripping into her lap as he drank greedily, eyes half closed in comfort. "I didn't think tonight would end like this," she murmured. "Neither did I," Daniel said. When they left the clinic, the rain had softened into a steady drizzle, like the storm itself was catching its breath. The car took them to a hotel, one of the city's finest. Glass doors slid open, revealing marble floors and golden light. Aisha froze at the entrance. "I can't go in there," she whispered. "They'll throw me out." Daniel placed a hand on the door, steady. "No one will throw you out." People inside turned to look. A homeless woman, wrapped in an oversized coat, holding a baby. Mud-stained feet. Tired eyes. She felt their stares like needles. Daniel walked beside her, unhurried, unashamed. At the front desk, he spoke calmly, booking a suite without glancing at the price. Aisha's world tilted. In the elevator, she finally asked the question that had been clawing at her. "Who are you?" Daniel hesitated, then answered simply. "I run a company." She almost laughed at that. "You're rich." "Yes," he said. "Very." The doors opened onto a quiet hallway. The suite was spacious, warm, filled with soft light. A crib was brought in within minutes. Fresh clothes, hot food. Aisha stood in the middle of the room, overwhelmed. This felt like stepping into someone else's life. "You can rest here tonight," Daniel said. "Tomorrow we'll talk." "About what?" she asked. "About your future." The word felt dangerous. Hope often was. She laid Yusuf in the crib and watched him sleep, truly sleep, for the first time in days. Then she turned to Daniel, her expression serious. "I don't want charity," she said. "I want dignity." Daniel met her gaze. "So, do I." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, an address. "This is where I grew up," he said quietly. "A shelter. My mother and I stayed there when I was a child." Aisha's breath caught. "I know what it's like," he continued. "To be invisible. To be cold. To be afraid your child won't survive the night." Tears streamed freely now, not from pain, but from recognition. Daniel turned to leave, giving her space. At the door, he paused. "Rest," he said. "Tomorrow, everything changes." When the door closed behind him, Aisha sank onto the bed, clutching the blanket. Outside, the rain tapped gently against the windows, no longer cruel, no longer loud. She didn't know what tomorrow held, but for the first time in a long time, she believed it might hold something good. Morning arrived quietly, as if it didn't want to frighten her away. Soft light slipped through the curtains, touching Aisha's face like a gentle promise. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she heard it, the slow, peaceful breathing of her baby. She bolted upright. Yusuf lay in the crib beside the bed, warm, clean, wrapped in white sheets that smelled like soap instead of rain. His cheeks were no longer pale. His tiny lips moved in his sleep, chasing dreams instead of survival. Aisha pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed. She hadn't slept this deeply in months. The fear that usually yanked her awake every few minutes had loosened its grip. A soft knock came at the door. She froze. "It's okay," a voice said from the other side. Daniel's voice.
Come.
Familiar. Room service. She opened the door slowly. A cart rolled in behind him, filled with food, real food. Warm bread, fruit, eggs, steaming tea. The smell alone made her dizzy. "I didn't know what you'd like," he said. "So, I ordered a bit of everything." Aisha laughed softly, almost disbelieving. "This is more food than I've seen in weeks." "Then we'll start there," Daniel replied. They ate together, not across a table like strangers, but sitting near the window, watching the city wake up. Yusuf stirred, and Aisha fed him again, her movements calmer now, steadier. After a while, Daniel spoke. "I had someone look into the shelters last night. The one you mentioned, overcrowded, underfunded." "I'm not surprised." She nodded. "They do what they can." "And so do you," he said. "But doing your best shouldn't mean suffering like that." Aisha lowered her cup. "I don't want to owe you," she said carefully. "People help, then they expect things." Daniel didn't flinch. "I'm not here to own you, Aisha. I'm here to offer options." He pulled out a thin folder and placed it on the table.
She stared at it, wary.
"I can help you get back on your feet," he continued. "Temporary housing, childcare, training if you want it, a job when you're ready." Her hands shook as she opened the folder. Inside were plans, numbers, timelines. A future drawn out in ink. "This is too much," she whispered. "Why me?" Daniel leaned back, choosing his words. "Because the world helped me once. And because if I walked away from you last night, I would have been betraying the man I promised myself I'd become." Aisha closed the folder slowly. "And what if I fail?"
"Then you try again," he said.
"Failure doesn't disqualify you from dignity." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." The word felt like stepping off a cliff. But sometimes, falling was the only way to learn there was ground beneath you. The following weeks passed like a careful dream. A small apartment replaced the hotel suite, modest, clean, hers. A crib by the window. Sunlight instead of streetlight. Yusuf gained weight, his laughter filling rooms instead of echoing off wet concrete. Aisha attended training programs during the day, learning skills she once thought were out of reach. In the evenings, she walked her son through a nearby park, watching other parents, slowly realizing she belonged among them. Daniel didn't hover. He checked in, offered support, but never control. When the media caught wind of his generosity, he shut it down immediately. "This isn't a story," he said to his team. "It's a life." One afternoon, weeks later, rain returned.
Softer this time.
Aisha stood by her window, watching it fall. For a moment, the old fear stirred, but it didn't take hold. She picked up Yusuf and smiled. "We're safe," she whispered. That evening, Daniel visited. He looked different, lighter, somehow. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the shelter I grew up in, about how many people are still out there." Aisha nodded. "I think about them too." He met her gaze. "I want to rebuild it, expand it, turn it into something better. And I'd like you to help lead it." She blinked. "Me? You know what people there need," he said. "More than I ever could." Emotions surged through her, strong and bright. This wasn't charity. This was purpose. "Yes," she said without hesitation. Outside, the rain continued to fall, no longer a symbol of suffering, but of renewal, washing away what had been and making room for what could be. Aisha held her son close, standing in a home she never thought she'd have, ready to help others find their way out of the storm. The grand opening of the shelter took place on a rainy afternoon.
It wasn't planned that way.
No one had checked the weather forecast or hoped for symbolism. But when the clouds gathered and rain began to fall softly from the sky, Aisha felt a strange sense of calm instead of fear. Rain no longer meant cold nights and hunger. It no longer meant standing invisible while the world rushed past. Now it meant remembrance and purpose. The building stood where the old shelter once had, but it was almost unrecognizable. Warm lights glowed behind wide windows. The entrance was open, welcoming, not guarded by exhaustion or apology. Inside, there were clean beds, a medical room, childcare spaces, and classrooms filled with possibility. People gathered outside, volunteers, families, donors, and those who had nowhere else to go. Some stood quietly, unsure if this place was truly meant for them. Aisha stepped forward, Yusuf in her arms. He was healthy now, curious eyes scanning the crowd, his fingers gripping her jacket. She took a breath and began to speak. "I stood in the rain once," she said, her voice steady though her heart raced. "I stood where many of you are standing now, cold, scared, and hoping someone would see me." The crowd fell silent. "I didn't need to be saved," she continued. "I needed to be seen. I needed dignity. I needed someone to believe my life and my child's life mattered." Daniel watched from a short distance away, hands clasped, saying nothing. This moment wasn't his. Aisha looked around at the faces before her. This place exists because one person chose compassion over convenience. But it will survive because all of us choose it every day. Applause rose, gentle at first, then strong. Some people wiped tears from their eyes. Others smiled for the first time in a long while. Later, as the doors opened and families stepped inside, the rain eased. Sunlight broke through the clouds, scattering across the wet pavement like quiet hope. Daniel approached Aisha as she stood by the entrance, watching people find warmth and safety.
"You did this," he said.
She shook her head. "We did." He smiled, and for once, it wasn't the practiced smile of a billionaire addressing the world. It was the smile of a man at peace. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "Every day," Daniel replied. "It reminds me how close I was to being just another car driving past." Aisha looked down at Yusuf, then back at the shelter. "One choice," she said softly. "That's all it took." As evening fell, the rain returned lightly, tapping against the windows. Inside, laughter echoed. Babies slept. People ate warm meals, safe from the storm. Years later, Aisha would tell Yusuf the story, not about wealth or miracles, but about humanity, about how the world could be cruel, but also kind, about how dignity could be given back when someone dared to look. And Daniel would continue his work quietly, knowing that his greatest success had nothing to do with money. Outside, the rain washed the city clean once more, no longer a symbol of suffering, but a reminder that compassion changes lives, that dignity saves souls, and that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is stop. If this story touched your heart, remember this: kindness doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes quietly in the middle of a storm, when the world has already looked away. One moment of compassion can become someone's second chance. One decision can turn suffering into hope. So the next time you see someone standing in the rain, struggling to protect what little they have, don't just pass by.
See them.
Because dignity costs nothing, but it can change a life forever. If you believe humanity still matters, like this video, share it, and subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us who we truly are.